let's move on to our next speaker. Oscar, are you there?
I am.
Great, good to see you. So share your screen and take it away.
All right, so let's do this. Are we in business?
Yes, perfect.
Excellent. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Oscar Woolner. I am from MTEK Industry AB. We are, I think it's fair to say, a fairly long-standing member of things. I don't know how many years, Magnus probably does, but almost since the beginning. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how the Toyota way, i.e. the typical lean production methodology, meets Industry 4.0. And before I do that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about MTEK and what we are. Some of you will be familiar with us. We've had a fairly long journey. Today, we consider ourselves a method-centric software solution provider for the manufacturing industry. And of course, I will walk you through what we think that means. The company in its current form was formed in 2016. And its founders are people who come from the manufacturing industry, who know manufacturing, who know the process around manufacturing, who know lean production, inside out. So we're born in manufacturing, but we're bred in software. So what we provide today is a software solution for manufacturing. We consider it to be method-centric. I should probably turn that off, right? Method-centric in the way that we contextualize data from the production process, as well as from the manual assembly work, as well as from machines. So the context in which we're talking today, where there have been many illustrious speakers before me that have been sort of addressing various parts of this ecosystem, is actually perfect for us, because we sort of touch on all of these areas. So it's great to follow a lot of these companies before me. We're currently operating, we're a fairly new company, but operating almost on a global scale with installations across North and South America, as well as Europe and Asia. And we have two significant shareholders and partners. One is the American Industrial Corporation, Ultra Industrial Motion, and the other is ABB. Ultra, by the way, is actually well known for its lean business system, which is relevant in this context. Now, so why do you want to go for a method-centric approach to digitizing your manufacturing? Well, if you consider the goal of any organization, and perhaps it's very relevant even more so to manufacturing, it's typically you want to increase your throughput while simultaneously reducing your inventory and your operating expense. Sounds very basic. The question is, how do you do that from a digitization perspective? Well, you probably want to deploy tools that support your people and your process. We're talking about automation, we're talking about digitization. Those things are super relevant, and we do those too. But to be able to extract value across all of those dimensions, you probably want to look at something that extends throughout the process, and that includes all of the different parts of the process, including the human element of it, of course. Which brings us to the next point, which is focus on the flow and the process instead of the local optimums and the sort of asset-specific analytics, which is also super relevant, but this is a slightly different approach. And traditionally, also, if you want to go into manufacturing operations, you also want to make sure you provide tools that actually support your continuous improvement, the Kaizen type of activities that are going on in most manufacturing contexts. Now, I wanted to walk you through a customer case. The case, unfortunately, is a little bit specific in terms of some of the details, and therefore I won't be showing you. I'll be showing you some pictures there from a different customer, but the concept will be the same. The customer case I want to talk to you about today is really about they came to us and wanted to find a better way of ensuring and documenting a very high build quality of their products. The way they wanted to do this was to deploy a system that gave them a very granular level of traceability where they were able to track not just what was happening to the product, but also which components that went into it, what processes had been used to build it, et cetera, et cetera. And this was particularly relevant in this case because the product itself goes into mission critical applications and has certain characteristics that well, you want to make sure it's built properly, otherwise it can be dangerous. So the solution, of course, was to deploy a software that supported the work of the manual operators, that integrated well into the manufacturing process, and more importantly, that covered the whole process end to end. We think it's really important to engage the human operators in these kinds of systems and in the data collection, continuous data collection on the shop floor, and that's a key characteristic of the solution that we deployed. So when we go into a factory, and this is taking a little bit of step back, when we go into a factory, the kinds of things that we love to see when we get there is this. If you look at the left-hand image, it probably doesn't, at first glance, lend itself super well to the sorts of things that you typically imagine when you're talking about Industry 4.0. But actually, if you zoom in on this picture, you'll see that everything is in order, everything is labeled, everything is exactly where it's supposed to be, and that sort of the first level of chaos that you think you see is actually really well ordered. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see the other side of that, which is what the operators are doing in this factory. It's tracking everything very, very closely to give them the data they need to support the Gemba walks and support their continuous improvement. The drawback, of course, with this is when you do this manually, you always sort of, there's a limit to how granular you can be, because otherwise the recording of the data and the events just take too much time. So the reason we love to see this kind of thing when we come to a factory is, of course, there's a very clear method to the madness in this kind of environment. And we also know when we come into these environments that we will have a really great potential to come in with our product, where we know there's a culture of continuous improvement, and we know that you go into an organization that likes to develop its people, its culture, and work with whatever tools they have at their disposal. So that makes us super happy when we see that kind of thing, because that we know that we can deliver value quickly. Now, coming back to the case that I was talking about, some of the specific challenges that we needed to address in this case, which will be similar to many other cases out there that you're all familiar with, I'm sure, is that the customer, of course, they have a large amount of product variations that are basically a result of what we see in many situations today, where there's an increasing customer adaptation to any kind of products, where you configure the customer is typically allowed to configure more and more products, which sort of reduces the batch sizes to worst case to one. It wasn't quite that bad in this case, but they had a high degree of product variation. They needed also, because these things couldn't be automated completely, which is also the case in many operations today, they needed to be able to collect data from manual processes inside of the assembly process and inside of the factory. And they also had a challenge with the fact that they were producing the same or similar products across many different factories around the world. So they needed a system that could help them ensure fidelity to the manufacturing process as it had been defined by the designers of the product and designers of the process. To ensure the quality of the product to their end customer, they also needed to see component level traceability, and they needed to be able to verify and document several layers of the process. And this will be similar if anyone is producing, for instance, a medical device, or in defense or in aerospace. Those types of constraints are typically common. And of course, the customer also is regularly changing its production process, regularly changing its product design, etc. And then therefore needed flexibility on their side to be able to change the process regularly. So how do we address this? Well, on the right-hand side, you see the first two, which have to do with the variations of the product, and which had to do with the involvement of the human operator in the data collection. We therefore started by defining the process in our system, and actually this is fairly easily done with a drag and drop type of environment, so the customer can do that themselves, which they did, and which is something that helps them to stay engaged with the system and helps them to actually reduce the total cost of ownership of it as well. And they deployed dynamic digital work instructions for the people in the factory, where they are allowed to sort of interact with the system and verify certain things over time. Of course, we also integrated this to various kinds of sensors, button scanners, etc. So there's a combination of IoT data as well as data from manual input, which you can then analyze together to produce a better result. And as far as the other things go with the traceability components and making sure that you produce the same way in different factories, of course, we integrate with the ERP and PLM environment, so we could use that information to build a better process and centralize the information related to manufacturing quality in one place. Of course, it also helps us to track the batches, etc., and combine that with the sensor and scanner data, etc. And what this sort of builds in total is kind of a process poka-yoke. If you're familiar with manufacturing, you'll probably be familiar with that expression, but poka-yoke is, for those who maybe haven't heard it, it's the process where you design something to make it sort of fail-safe, if you like. So this is doing that on a process level. Last but not least, given that we're deploying a tool that is easy to use, it helps the customer to actually do these things themselves and to change the process themselves as they need to. So this worked really well. So what was the result, you might ask? To the left here, it's a little bit small, I recognize that, but what we're able to produce for the customer in this case was a traceability log that traces everything that's happened to their production environment, everything that happened to the product, everything that happened to the process, who was doing it, what settings they had on the machines, did things pass through all the controls it was supposed to pass through, etc. And aside from meeting the objectives of the originally stated goals, it had certain other sort of ancillary benefits to the customer, which included things like an improved operator engagement, where you can see that the operators actually like working in this kind of environment. You get faster training and onboarding because you have these digital work instructions that make it really clear for everyone what to do. You actually bring the error rates down, with the yield up, if you like, in the production environment. You get quicker cycles around plan, do, check, act, which just more quickly allows you to iterate things, and in combination with a scalable and easily adjustable platform, that's a powerful tool. It lays a great foundation for further digitization, and last but not least, it gives you a very nice environment on which to add all of the kinds of things that we've been talking about today in these various talks. They fit really neatly into this overall digitized process, where you can then say, okay, let's go. I have something is wrong with my process here. Let's go and analyze that machine in more detail, for instance. So the next steps then with this, what happened after you go, obviously we go from a machine level to a factory level to sort of a continuous improvement type of situation. The customer seemed to be fairly happy with this. So we've now gone from one installation with them to now looking at a global rollout across their entire manufacturing operations. So I think that's a good sign. And again, just to sort of sum up why we think this method-centric approach is a valuable one, and it really comes back to what Jeffrey Liker, the author of the Toyota Way book, wrote recently, and it's about adopting and adapting technology that supports your people and your process. That is effectively what we are all about. And of course, this is interesting. feel free to reach out, and we'll guide you in more detail. And I think that's it.
Great, Oscar. Thank you so much.